I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, President Trump calling the $900 billion COVID-19 relief package a disgrace, urging Congress to increase the direct payments to struggling Americans. Well, several Republican lawmakers say the measure is too expensive and will lead to higher taxes and increased federal debt. Chief economist of Moody's Analytics, Mark Zandi, breaks down what the stimulus package includes and what he believes is the most important part of the bill. And while online shopping may make it easier to snag those last-minute holiday gifts, it may also make it easier for cyber criminals to gain access to your personal information. Fox News technology reporter Brett Larson shares tips on how to protect yourself and your data. Plus commentary from Fox News contributor and co-host of The Five, Juan Williams. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcast.com.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
I'm Shannon Bream, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020. I'm Dave Anthony. More corona financial aid is coming to Americans to boost the economy while we wait for vaccines to work.
Once we're on the other side of the pandemic, I feel confident that we're going to be off and running. There's just a lot of reasons to believe that the economy has got a lot of juice that it wants to unleash.
I'm Chris Foster. The holiday season's always a big one for hackers and online scam artists, and Fox News technology reporter Brett Larson says not only that,
I think it's pretty safe to say at this point, somewhere out there lurking on the internet is your name, your social security number with your birth date, and quite possibly your current home address.
And I'm Juan Williams. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
It took 7 months of partisan bickering, but Congress has finally approved more COVID financial relief.
It's not too little too late. It's directly targeted at exactly what the country needs right now.
Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell and the president-elect agrees.
It does provide vital relief at a critical moment.
But to Joe Biden, it's a down payment.
And addressing the crises, more than one that we're in. There's a lot more work to do.
Now, the $900 billion package includes direct payments to most of us, plus extended and extra unemployment benefits, more PPP loans to help small businesses, and housing assistance, money for education, and vaccine distribution. Most lawmakers in both parties approved, but not GOP Senator Rand Paul.
If money really grew on trees, why not give more free money? Why not give it out all the time?
Well, Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer thinks more money does need to go out.
We're going to need a bigger, bolder bill and try to do it first thing when Joe Biden becomes president. So January, February, we will start.
This as consumer confidence wanes as COVID surges.
I think it's good enough to forestall a double-dip recession. I think if lawmakers hadn't signed on the bottom line here, the economy would have gone back into recession early in 2021, so I think we've avoided that.
Mark Zandi is chief economist for Moody's Analytics.
I do think the economy is going to continue to struggle until the pandemic starts to fade away, and on that front, things look a little bit more worrisome at the moment than they did just a week or two ago. So I think we've got a lot of things, a lot of script to be written here.
What is it in the last 2 weeks? Is it the renewed restrictions with the surge of COVID?
Yeah, I think the pandemic is intensifying, and I do worry about the new strain of virus in the UK. It is much more contagious, and logic would dictate, based on the experience with this that we've had so far, that it's not going to be contained. That likely will come here, and that means even more infections, more hospitalizations, and more deaths. It's not more virulent, so the mortality rate doesn't appear to be any different. That's good news. But the fact that more people are going to get infected and hospitalized, that'll do damage to the economy. And, the hospital systems across the country are already operating pretty much at full tilt. And so I think local officials are going to be under extraordinary pressure to restrict activity. So we're going to see more lockdowns across the country. So I do think this is something we need to be worried about.
All right. So there are a lot of things in this stimulus package. There's direct payments. There's the extended unemployment with $300 a week in extra benefits. Of those two, what's more important to you?
The UI benefits are critical. We have lots of unemployed Americans, 20 million unemployed Americans that have no other source of income, and they are relying very heavily on those checks. And without this piece of legislation, all that money would go away by the end of this year, in the next couple of weeks. And so the extension of the emergency unemployment insurance and the $300 extra plus up in weekly plus up in the payment, I think is very, very important. These are smaller things, but also very important. Was the rental eviction fund, rental assistance fund to try to forestall evictions on people. There's about 10 million renters out there that aren't making their rent payments because they can't and are subject to eviction, and this will help with those folks. I think that smaller in the grand scheme of things, but also very important.
The last time this went through in the spring, the extra unemployment was $600 a week. Now we're down to $300. Is it better or worse, this one?
Well, I would have gone with the $600 a week. I know there's a lot of debate around whether the $600 would result in disincentives to work, that people would decide not to work even if they had the opportunity to, because of the $600 a week would cause their income to be higher than they would otherwise if they were working. But there's actually been a lot of good research done since the $600 a week expired, and there's really no evidence that it had any meaningful impact on people's incentives to work. I mean, I'm sure there are examples, but from a broad economic perspective, no real evidence. And I do think the financial stress out there is very significant. I mean, the Census Bureau runs a survey. They've been doing it since the pandemic began, almost weekly or biweekly, and they ask folks what, where they're getting their income, their funds to just, pay bills. Yeah. And increasingly you can see the stress. I mean, almost 10% of the respondents are now on food stamps, up from, 1 or 2% back at the start of the pandemic. So they just and they're drawing down any resources they had. They're increasingly borrowing from friends and family. So I think the stress out there is very significant. So if I were king for the day, I would have gone for the $600 a week. But $300 I think is enough again to forestall a dark scenario for the economy.
Now to these direct payments. The extra unemployment, the amount is half what was in the spring financial aid package. Instead of $1,200 per person, it's $600, twice that for married couples, and $600 per child. But not everyone will get that. It phases out based on income, starting at $75,000 a year. If you earn $100K or more, you get nothing. Double that for couples. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wishes it was more money, but calls these payments significant.
The president may insist on having his name on the check, but make no mistake, those checks are from the American people.
And back to Republican Senator Rand Paul. He told Fox,
what could be dumber as an idea to print up money we don't have, or borrow it from foreign countries, or borrow it from whoever we have to borrow it from, and give it to people who are still working?
And Mark Zandi isn't a big fan either.
Yeah, it's not my favorite way to help households. I mean, I think it, as you point out, it's not well targeted, and that a fair amount of the money is going to go to households that aren't under a lot of financial stress. That's why the UI, the unemployment insurance, is I think much more effective, because it's directly targeted to the people who need the help. And I do think we have some experience here. There was a first round of stimulus checks back March, April, May as part of the CARES Act. And we did see a large share of that money just sit in people's checking accounts. They're saving it and they're not using it. So it's not the most efficacious form of support to the economy. I mean, if I had to make a choice, I probably would have taken the money from the stimulus checks and used that to provide help to state and local governments, because if they don't get help, they have no choice but to cut jobs and programs and services that are critical to the economy. So I would have made a different choice here.
Yeah, and I know there are a lot of stories of cities that are dealing with that issue right now. They've had to lay off some workers, don't have the money to bring them back, or don't have money for a new police or fire class for the 2021. Yet, it's a political football because on the right, there are Republicans who say that some states have been poorly run, or some cities poorly run, into deficit by too much spending for liberal programs, and Democrats have done a bad job fiscally, and now we're bailing them out with this money. That's the argument from the right, and that's why it wasn't in this bill, because it was one of those things that couldn't get passed.
Yeah, and it's not a red or blue state problem. I mean, if you look across the country, in fact, the states that are struggling the most are states that are typically, Republican dominated. So, I'm just really hard pressed to understand that. I mean, in fact, if you look at overall state and local government spending in aggregate and look at it relative to the size of the economy, say GDP, it's no higher today. In fact, it's lower today than it's been on average over the past 50, 60 years. So it's really difficult to make that argument. Again, there are examples. I mean, the state of Illinois is a poster child for bad fiscal management, and I agree, you don't want to reward that. It doesn't make any sense. But broadly speaking, no. And there's really strong evidence from the financial crisis and other recessions that providing support to the state and local government so that they don't have to cut teachers and fire and police and emergency responders and healthcare workers is really very effective in helping out the economy.
All right, let's get into the other thing that wasn't in this package because Democrats were not happy with it. That was the Republican push for liability protection in this crisis from people suing companies and such. What do you think of that, and do you think that kind of protection is needed?
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to providing some protections to businesses. I mean, you got to be very careful to balance the rights of people who've been wronged, so that they can be compensated if they're inappropriately treated. But I do think the pandemic has created some very unusual circumstances, and we don't want to end up after the pandemic in just a flood of suits and litigation, and it just will delay the ability of the economy to recover. So I think some form of liability protection is probably a good idea.
2021, we have more vaccinations. We also have a change in presidents. Joe Biden will take over in January. In your estimation, as an economist, what happens in your view when you change from one party to the other party? Has that typically been a big factor in the economy?
No, it hasn't. Usually policies with large economic consequences, play out over longer periods of time. And just to switch over from one administration to the next isn't a big deal. Those big changes take place over extended periods. This may be a little different, though, because the policies that President Biden will pursue are very different than the ones President Trump will. But there are things that he can do administratively that will be very different than President Trump. Around trade, for example, I think he'll still be very forceful and engage the Chinese, but with other trading partners, I think he's going to eliminate those higher tariffs that President Trump put in and normalize relationships. But in the grand scheme of things, no, this isn't going to change things that significantly.
All right, so 2021's economy is based more on how well we can get out of this pandemic then, right?
Once we're on the other side of the pandemic, I feel confident that we're going to be off and running. There's just a lot of reasons to believe that the economy has got a lot of juice that it wants to unleash, and we'll get a lot more growth. I mean, there's certainly going to be problems we're going to have to work through over a longer period of time, and there's going to be a long tail to this pandemic. But I do think on the other side of this, we should get going.
Mark Zandi, Chief Economist, Moody's Analytics. Thanks for joining us, and happy holidays, happy New Year to you.
Thanks, Dave. You too. I hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you.
This is Juan Williams with your Fox News commentary. Coming up.
2020 has been a big year for fraud. The Federal Trade Commission is reporting record losses to social media scams. Its Operation Income Illusion has been cracking down on false promises of money or jobs, going after dozens of operators of those schemes. And the holidays are the most wonderful time of year for scam artists trying to rip us off, especially now during the coronavirus pandemic, with more people than ever browsing and doing their Christmas shopping online.
This is always the time of year when scams go up.
Brett Larson's an anchor on Fox News Headlines 24/7 on Sirius XM and a technology reporter on Fox News Channel and Fox Business Network.
It's the holidays. People are shopping online. You're probably shopping at stores you may not have shopped at during the year, so you're getting a lot of emails about the orders. And when you add to that the whole coronavirus and the hacks and things happening around that from the ne'er-do-wells on the internets, it's going to be an interesting several weeks to see what happens.
Well, you mentioned, for example, email receipts. The thing about these scams is that they're really cheap and simple to set up. And if you just send everybody an email that looks like it came from Target, a good percentage, or Walmart or whatever it is, a good percentage of your recipients are going to have shopped there. And they're going to say, "Oh, geez, I did order something. I better click on this. Oh, it's a problem with my order. I better click on this," etc.
Right, and it's the easiest scam to carry out this time of year for that very reason. All of us are going to be shopping online this year because we're all hunkered down in our homes because of the pandemic, and the reality is, FedEx isn't going to email you and say, "There's a problem with your order. Click here and give us your credit card information." That's not going to happen. So you have to pay close attention. And you're absolutely right. These hackers don't have to be extra careful and, cross their T's and dot their I's on these kinds of emails, because if you send out right now an email to 1,000 people that says your Walmart order has been delayed, click here so we can fix it, there's almost a guarantee that at least 100 people are going to click on the link in that email, even though it's totally bogus. Because a lot of people may not have even shopped at Walmart or Target or Costco, but they may see the email and think, well, I did buy something online. Maybe this is it. A lot of times when you buy things on Amazon, you're buying it from maybe a small business somewhere. That's going to be shipped by them. Amazon's handling the transaction, but you're not going to get that kind of email. So the best thing to do if you're shopping online, keep a list of everything and every place that you've ordered. Hang on to those receipts. And then if you get a suspicious email from a vendor, don't click on the link in the email. Go to the website where you went to place that order. Go to Etsy, go to Walmart, go to Target.com, and log into your account and see if there's any alerts there. Because if it's true, it's going to be there.
Unless it's just perfect, the replication of the email and the website that you go to, whatever, there's not much you can do there. But what are some really obvious sloppy things that people should be looking for?
There's often typos in these emails. The grammar is wrong. Spelling can be incorrect. The graphics may not look right. Companies that do these mass email marketing campaigns, they put a lot of energy into making sure whether you open that email on your mobile device or you open it on your computer or you open it on your tablet, that it looks right for your screen. Well, that takes a lot of work, and a lot of work means more money and more effort into something. And if it's a scam, you're not going to put that level of effort into it. So the email's going to look a little wonky. So pay attention to that. Pay attention, like I mentioned, to the typos and the spelling mistakes. And then if you hover your mouse over a link, which you can do on your computer, you can tap and hold it on a mobile device without actually opening the page. You're going to see where that link is actually taking you. So if it's not taking you to Walmart.com, if it's taking you to, say, orderinquiry.rizvex.ca. whatever, that's a bogus address.
Flicking through Instagram, Facebook, whatever, every now and then you see stuff, not every now and then, every day you see stuff advertised that's meant for you, Most of them perfectly legitimate. Totally. A lot of this stuff, to use a cliche, if it looks too good to be true, it is. That stuff's never coming to you. That $50 thing that you see on a Facebook ad that should be $500, You're just going to give somebody you're just giving somebody $50.
Yeah. We saw this so much during the ongoing COVID pandemic because people were looking for specific things. People were looking for hand sanitizer. People were looking for face masks. People were looking for, toilet paper and soap, in some instances. Well, a lot of very savvy hackers got in on that. I actually saw an ad that came in my Instagram feed, looked totally legit. They had a website. The website looked legit. The website was able to take my credit card information and place my order, and I got charged for it, and nothing showed up. And that's actually happening a lot because the barrier to entry to put an advertisement on Facebook and Instagram is pretty low. You can do it all online. You don't have to interface with a person. You need very little information in terms of what your business is. You need a website. You need the ability to take credit cards. Well, that's something you can get from GoDaddy for a few $100s, and you're good to go. You're going to make that money back if you process 10 fraudulent orders at $30 a piece. Well, there's $300. You made some money. So definitely when you're scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, when you see those ads, like you said, if it looks too good to be true, it ain't happening. We're also seeing this with the PlayStation 5, which is selling out. It's, once again, it's a hugely popular device to get. People want it under the Christmas tree. They want their kids to have it for the holiday season. And that is inevitably turns into an opportunity for scammers to get your money, for people to resell it to you for 2 or 3 times its value. There are folks who are selling access to these shopping bots. So you can pay $50 to have access to this shopping bot that will then go out and try and buy you a PlayStation. I mean, there's the higher a demand goes for a product, the more you're going to see scams like that. So you have to be very aware of where you're shopping online and how much things cost.
You mentioned coronavirus for a minute. I suppose we're also going to have to worry now about scams. People who may desperately want a vaccine or desperately need money or need a job. So there are a lot of vulnerable people there who might be seeing what they want to see in terms of offers.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and I'm certain this will happen. I'm hopeful that the government comes out and sets some very clear guidelines on how this will work, so that scams like this are going to be a little harder to undertake. But you still have to be extra careful around these big issues. I mean, these are social engineering hackers now. That's what all of this stuff is. They take advantage of the news story of the day, the news trend of the week, the news trend of the last year. They take advantage of all that stuff, and they know where the needle is going in terms of the opinion of people that they're reaching out to. So they know people are anxious about not having a job. They know people are nervous about getting a vaccine, and they're going to take advantage of that.
If you have been taken advantage of financially, or they got your personal information, is it easier now to be made whole, or if somebody's got your personal information to impersonate you, are you still just as hard off as you were maybe 10, 15 years ago when this stuff was really becoming prevalent? Is it easier to deal with?
Yeah, at this point, I think it's gotten a little bit easier to deal with, because at this point, all of us have been compromised. Between those massive hacks that we saw over the last few years with, the tens of millions of credit card numbers that were stolen from Target or Home Depot, or, insert giant retailer and, follow up with the hack. We've seen so many of those. With the Equifax breach, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point, somewhere out there lurking on the internet is your name, your social security number with your birth date, and quite possibly your current home address. You have to be, unfortunately, because of that, you have to be extra vigilant. You have to pay attention to your bank statements. You have to pull your credit report as often as you can. Set up alert monitoring. So if somebody tries to open a credit card account with your information, you're going to be alerted to that. Lock down your credit account if you can. When you're purchasing online, always, always, always use a credit card. If you don't like using credit cards, if you instead use a debit card, make sure you have purchase protection. talk to your bank, find out what you're on the hook for if somebody gets your debit card, because your debit card is connected directly to your bank account. If somebody pulls $400 off of it, that goes away from you right away. At least with your credit card, or when you use a credit card, if somebody fraudulently uses it, you can call the credit card company and say, that wasn't me. And for at least while they investigate, you're not going to be on the hook for the charge. And hopefully, obviously, they'll come out the other end and say, you know what, you're right. We've had several fraudulent charges to this company, and we're going to go ahead and reverse that for you.
Brett Larson, Fox News Headlines 24/7 on SiriusXM, does some technology reporting on Fox Business Network, Fox News Channel. Brett, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, buddy.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you too, Chris. Nice chatting with you.
New from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
My name is Kennedy, and welcome to my podcast, which will, I humbly say, single-handedly save the world. You're welcome.
It's Kennedy Saves the World. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
It's time for your Fox News commentary.
Juan Williams.
What's on your mind?
Earlier this month, I tested positive for the coronavirus. I'm a 66-year-old cancer survivor. I'm a black man, and I inhale my share of secondhand smoke because my wife smokes cigarettes. So I set off several red lights that indicate a high risk of a bad outcome if I got COVID-19. And I really didn't want my wife, the smoker, to have a COVID-19 attacking her lungs. After the phone call telling me I tested positive on a lab test, I was sent for 2 more tests. They confirmed the worst. Yes, a bad situation kept going down. When I called home, my wife told me I couldn't come home for fear of spreading the virus to her. So I immediately went into quarantine in a hotel room. I got to tell you, physically, I was not doing well. Already, there was extreme fatigue, sudden waves of fever, and then chills that left goosebumps on my skin. The headaches, the sinus pain, feeling as if I was going to pass out. It was terrible. At night, sleep was rare. Dreams, they were out of control. I'd turn over and think, this bed is wet. Then I'd realize there was sweat pouring off of me. But it was the isolation that was hellish. That and feeling caught in an out-of-control situation. The doctors, they tell you there's not much they can do for you when you have coronavirus until you can't breathe. If you have trouble breathing, they say, call an ambulance. The text and the emails from friends in my moment of such grave fear became a lifeline. So many people helped me push back the fear. My son left me novels. My daughter left a folding exercise bike so I could keep moving. Even better, my daughter brought my grandchildren to the street far below my hotel room window. They waved at me. The hotel staff left food outside my door. Despite the kindness, my mind started to wander into some dark places. I can't sugarcoat it. I was going a little stir-crazy. Sick as I was, I found myself telling a friend to look out for my family if the virus overwhelmed me. And you start asking yourself, where did I get this? What did I do wrong? It's only speculation, but the biggest risk I took was one cold night when I got pulled into a crowded New York restaurant. A few days after that, I reached out to a doctor, but he told me not to worry. Even my nose started dripping. I told myself, don't be a wimp. It's allergy season. The seasons are changing, and people do get colds. But it got worse. And then came the positive test. 3 days into quarantine, my wife called to say she tested positive. Then my guilt kicked in. But the doctor said since we both had the virus, now we could quarantine together. I could go home, finally. Ending the isolation was a big emotional lift. Now, several weeks after my positive test and my quarantine, I'm feeling much better. My wife is even better, thank God. Over the years, I've rarely shared personal stories. Listeners come here to hear about the theater of politics. My general rule is to only open personal wounds when there's a clear lesson to offer. The lesson here is to take this virus seriously, wear the mask, wash your hands, keep your social distance, and reach out to people who've been hit with it. especially at this time of year. The coronavirus doesn't care whether you're a liberal or conservative. We're all in this together. Our best hope is to take care of each other. Merry Christmas.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network. In these ever-changing times, you can rely on Fox News for hourly updates for the very latest news and information on your time. Listen and download now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.